Welcome to the Healthy Perspective Podcast with your host, chiropractor, entrepreneur, mentor, and author, Dr. Chris Bowman. He'll break down and extract the secret sauce behind his own success and the success of some of the top leaders in every category and from around the world. Get ready for your weekly mental adjustment because shift is going to happen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Perspective Podcast. I promise you this will be a high energy podcast that you're going to want to slow down. Don't listen to this on 2x speed. There's going to be so many gems and stories and relatable things coming at you that I know you're going to enjoy it. Today, we have the pleasure of Adam Rosen. He's an entrepreneur that loves to support business owners and share his roller coaster startup journey to help those on a similar path. As a founder of a tech startup, Adam spent 5 years leading a college recruiting startup that was acquired in 2019 by a leading college marketing firm. On the side, he's a paid speaker and has coached hundreds of startups and small business owners. His primary focus is on helping startups get more sales appointments hassle-free through his lead generation business, Email Outreach Company. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Chris, I appreciate you having me on. Really excited to be here. And to echo your first point, I do tend to be a fast talker. You know, I'm from New York, as we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I'm probably naturally on 2x speed. So yeah, it's probably good to do 1x on this podcast.
1x on this podcast, yeah. And I'm West Coast. I don't talk any slower. So we're definitely going to be spitting fire here. So you went to college. Did you go to college to study entrepreneurship, or how did that go?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, honestly, I didn't really even know what entrepreneurship meant until my junior year of college. I was a sport management major. My goal as a kid was to be a professional athlete. And then when I realized that ain't happening, I shifted my focus to wanting to be a general manager of a sports team. So that was always my goal. And it wasn't until I did a couple internships, one with the minor league baseball team, one with the Philadelphia Phillies, where I was like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I always have a story during my minor league internship that I was doing. I wasn't getting paid. I was working 12-hour days during game days and, driving 45 minutes there and back to the ballpark. And I remember I grabbed a hot dog once and, $1.25 hot dog. And I came back and my advisor was like, hey, did you pay for that hot dog? I was like, I'm working for free here. What do you mean I have to pay for this $1.25 hot dog? So it was at that point, I was like, I got to find something else. Wasn't in alignment with what I really wanted to do. And I took an entrepreneurship class, fell in love with it. My advisor at the time, my professor, she was starting an entrepreneurship program that next year. She hired me to run it. It went well, turned into a 1-year MBA where I continued leading that program. And then I started my first business about 3 weeks before I graduated from my 1-year MBA program.
It's amazing, man. And it's funny, we have kind of a similar journey. I wanted to be a professional athlete as well. And I had a similar aha moment. Not that this is a lot of hustle for very little reward, but it was more of like, man, I'm called to something greater than the entertainment industry. Like when that hits you, it's like literally all you do is entertain people. Sure, there's some inspiration and, so there's some great stories in professional sports, but it's like the amount of impact we can have as an entrepreneur. And you think about like the foundations that like Michael Jordan and Kobe, all these people that like that is making way more impact than their playing ever made. So I love that when that light bulb goes on, it's like my life is meant for impact, not entertainment.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. If I could have been a professional athlete, I think that would have been an amazing path, and I definitely would sign up for that. But whether it's Michael Jordan or the late great Kobe, or people like Oprah, a lot of what they talk about is like for Oprah, her vehicle is the Oprah Winfrey Show. To the impact that she's been able to have and that she'll continue to have. And same with Michael Jordan and all these other athletes and a lot of other entertainers or celebrities or business owners, whatever that might be. It's what's that vehicle that allows you to accomplish whatever that bigger purpose that I think we all have, whether or not we figure out what exactly that purpose is. I think we all do have some greater purpose, and it's always just what's that vehicle to get that purpose to as many people as possible.
Right. So you chose entrepreneurship. Were your parents entrepreneurs, or what was it like just kind of like starting something?
Yeah, no, I mean, my father, he always worked, for a corporate job. So he ran radio stations mainly in the New York City area and then bounced around a bit. So that was the corporate lifestyle that he was always a part of. My mom, I'm one of four, so I had 3 other siblings. So my mother took care of us. And then she had a flower business on the side. So she was a little bit of an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
But I wouldn't, my grandparents, they were not entrepreneurs. So I wouldn't say it
Mhm.
came from an entrepreneurial background. And I remember when I was starting my company, it was, coming out of college, I had a really good job offer at the time for something that I could pursue. And like any parents, they want their kids to feel
Mhm.
safety. They want certainty. They want comfort.
Yeah.
And I remember telling them that I was going to start this business. And, they're very supportive parents. At first, they were like, "Are you sure you want to do that, Adam?" But once I told them my decision, they trust me. They've always had faith in me, and they were
Mhm.
all on board for it. But no, it was certainly out of the norm for what my family had done.
Now, why don't you speak into overcoming the fear of starting a business? Because I think now, I mean, you're well aware, just like I am, of the Great Resignation. Finding people is hard to work for you. We're seeing more and more people quitting their jobs, pursuing their dreams and passions. And I know there's a boatload of more people ready mentally to do it, but just not ready to take that step of leaving security, leaving and the quote unquote certainty. I think if COVID taught anyone anything, is that there is no certainty. Anything can be taken away at any moment. How did you overcome at such a young age, which with such little experience and really, I don't know, role modeling in entrepreneurship, just to take that step and that I'm going to sell something that I created?
Yeah, I think part of it, frankly speaking, I say this a lot. When I started that company, I was a pup. I was 22,
Yeah.
turning 23 or so. Like I was a pup. And even today, I'm a 30-year-old going on 31. Like I'm a pup. And I hope that a year from now, I call myself a pup today. 10 years from now, I call myself a pup today. So like we were saying earlier, like you can't teach experience, but part of it is I was a pup and I was very naive. And I think
Mm.
there was a great quote I heard, so I'm not making this up, but it basically says, if people knew what it was really like to start a business, no one would ever do it.
Mm.
So part of being naive, I think, was important, where if I knew what the next 5, 6 years were going to be, um, there's a good, maybe I still would have done it, but I maybe would have paused a little bit more.
Right.
So I think part of it certainly is being naive. But one of my business partners and my initial business partners, I started with 2 business partners. Now it's me and one of those business partners. We've continued working together through our time with my tech startup and working together today. He's about 5, 6 years older than me. And I just have a lot of faith in him, a lot of trust in him. And I remember when we decided to go all in with that first business, he told me the story about burning the boats. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard the story about burning the boats, but it's basically, hey, you have a small army, you hop on this ship, you go to another island to fight this much larger army. And right when you get off that ship, the captain burned down the boats. So they had no way to go. So everyone's yelling, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What if we got to get out of here?" And the captain said, "Hey, we're either going to win this battle or we're going to die on this field right here, but we can't have an escape path. If we have an escape
Right.
path, it's going to make it too easy to leave." And that's why when I started my business, we were thinking about making it a side hustle, but we knew the only way to really do it right was in order to go all in on it.
Yeah. And that's super important from your customer's perspective. I think one of the best and worst examples in today's day and age, maybe not New York, but like Florida and here in Southern California, where solar is booming. I guess Texas, where you're at right now, solar is booming. You don't want a half in solar company, get halfway through your install and then go under. Like you want somebody that's all in, no matter the circumstances. Like they're going to be there to take care of you. And I think people sense that when you're like, I'm going to test out this entrepreneur thing. Like I'm going to try to make a couple sales and then back out if I don't make it, or whatever. Why don't you speak to that? I don't know what you call it. Maybe a passion or commitment to what you're doing, and how do you convey that to people? Because that's the first part of the sales process, is certainty in your product and who you are and what you have, right? How do people that have maybe never even sold anything, have worked behind a desk all their life for somebody else, and be like, oh man, I have something that I want to sell now. How do you kind of make that first step into getting somebody to say yes to your product?
Yeah, it's a great point. And number one, even going back to kind of your earlier point, and that is what's always inspired me is I love following the greats, like the people that have been massively successful in any industry. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean necessarily they made the most money, but they're greats. That could be anything from Gandhi to more new age people like MJ or Oprah or Steve Jobs, to all these people from the, several centuries ago, Alexander the Greats of the world that people look up to, right? And the one thing they all have in common is they didn't dip their toes, right? They dove in head first, and that's always been an inspiration to me. And that's probably, to your earlier point, why I felt so comfortable diving in head first and being like, hey, everyone has accomplished anything truly remarkable, they've like been in the fire. They've really they've gone all in for something. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of conveying it to a customer, you're absolutely right, because nobody wants to buy a product from a product or service that might be gone 3 or 6 months from now. So one of the most important pieces in sales, and that's a lot of what I do, is I ran the sales of my tech startup, and I do a lot of coaching specifically on the sales and marketing side. And people think in order to be a good salesperson, you have to be a good talker. You have to just be an extrovert. And sure, that can help, but really it's how quickly can you develop trust? Because nobody wants to buy from someone who they don't know, like, or trust. So how do you give off that? And part of it is, if you're a brand new company, it's not bad to put guarantees in place. Can you put that certainty? Some people ask me that with my lead generation company. Hey, I worked with a previous lead generation company. They didn't produce good results. Would you ever put guarantees in place? And I say, absolutely. I'll put guarantees in place. But if we put guarantees in place on my side, on our side, then let's put guarantees in place on your side too. So if and when we do hit certain goals, that should kick something in as well. Maybe it's a longer contract, maybe it's more money, maybe it's an additional term that you want to add in there. So if you're a brand new company and you don't have the social proof to back you up, adding guarantees in place is always a good way to develop that trust.
Yeah, it's good because it shows that you're all in. Like if you're willing to put your own money on the line, then that's someone's going to trust that pretty quickly. I think another good.
Yeah, and real quick too on that point too is, everybody knows the right things to say. It's easy to say, I'm all in. It's easy to say, I want to do this for the next 10 years. It's easy to say, yeah, I don't mind, eating cereal and peanut butter for dinner. Everyone says that stuff. Everyone can get inspired for a short amount of time, but it's really just the action. It's the track record that people are going to start following. And that's why if you don't have the track record yet, if you don't have the social proof yet, what are other things that you can build as your foundation?
Yeah, it's good. And adding guarantees is one of them. Leveraging social proof is another one. Reviews, like all the stuff that you have on your website. Like, here's some of the replies that we've got from huge companies. Here's what customers are saying, and those are super easy to get. You can go to your friends and family and, and say, hey, can you review my product? And you start there. Like everyone started with their mom as their first sale, their first sale most of the time. It's okay, and I think a lot of people are I don't know, put off by that a little bit, where it's like the only people that are supporting me and my family. It's like those are the people that should be supporting you in the beginning. Those are the only people that trust you and know you, but leverage that trust that they have in you to then get other people to trust in you,
Yeah, and it's such an important point too, because the other thing is what we have to really be comfortable with as an entrepreneur is that it is a lonely path. That's why I'm such a believer, and it's so important. It's so difficult to be a solo founder. I've never been a true solo founder. I've always had my business partner by my side. I think it's so important to have that person. I remember my main investor in my tech company, he said, sometimes, Adam, it's going to feel like you're hanging on to a branch on a stormy, windy night, and you're just kind of holding on, and you're just all alone. You're out in the dark, and the tree is just swaying back and forth and back and forth. And that's a lot of how it can feel as an entrepreneur. And, you see people post on LinkedIn, hey, I just got this job at this big company. It's going to have, 500 likes. It's going to have 200 comments versus, you post, I just started this company. It's going to have 7 likes. It's going to have 2 comments. So expect it to be a lonely path. Be okay with that because as an entrepreneur, a lot of it's a battle of attrition. How long can you last? If you can keep lasting and lasting and lasting, it's like a boxing match. If you can make it to the 12th round, it gives you a shot at least to knock the guy out, even if you're losing the fight.
Right. That's good. Now, an aspect of business that I think a lot of people, at least kind of in the industry that I'm in and that I coach, more of the service industry, we don't talk a lot about selling your business. Really the only people that talk about it is like a lot of people leaving California because they don't like politics or medical stuff or whatever, and like, oh shoot, like I want to sell it. And so for example, I'm a chiropractor. I've seen chiropractic businesses that are grossing $200,000 or $300,000 going for $75,000 because the doctor just wants to leave. And it's like a negative multiple, like that makes zero. You've worked 15 or 20 years building this network and you can sell it for less than half of what you've made with it, but I think that's largely because service professionals make the business about them and not about the impact or the service that they're providing. How can entrepreneurs begin a startup with that end in mind of like, hey, your exit might be worth more than 10 years in the, you building the business?
I'm so happy you brought that up. I'm so passionate about what you just said right there. So anyone that's listening to this podcast, like go back to the beginning of what Chris just said, starting right there, because it's so freaking important. Because I talked to so many entrepreneurs, and this was one of my biggest mistakes. One of my best piece of advice I got from one of my now good friends and mentors who's run several very successful companies is, Adam, you have to build your company to sell it from the start. And one of my favorite books to read, I always recommend it to any entrepreneur. I don't care if you're a chiropractor business, a tech startup, an accounting firm, it does not matter. Read the book Built with a T to Sell. It's a blue and white cover. I forgot the name of the author. An amazing book. So for us, when I started, again, going back to me being a pup, it was, I want this to be IPO or bust, billionaire bust. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And we didn't build in the foundation and the systems necessary to make my business a true sellable asset, which is why, yes, we were acquired, but we were not acquired for the amount of money that we could and should have been acquired for if we did a better job of building to sell from the start. So my recommendation to any startup is always, from the start of your business, and even if you've already have your business, that's okay. You can go back and start doing it now. You have to create the systems and the foundation to make it so that another company can take your business and implement it. How do you get to at least a 1x multiplier, 1.5x multiplier, depending on your business, 10x or 20x multiplier? The only way you can do that is if you have the systems in place that another company can plug into. That could be customers. That could be a process of getting new business. That could be a process of retaining your business. That could be a process of upselling your business, your customers. That could be a process of hiring, of retaining your employees, of engaging with your employees. That could be a process of your technology if you have a technology. That could be a process of lead generation with your website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got to build to sell from the start. And if your business can't run without you doing the nitty gritty of it, you don't have a sellable asset. You need to make it so you have a sellable asset. And if you do, and this is my last point here, if you do have a sellable asset, you have one of a few things. One, you're going to have a business that's a hell of a lot more fun for you to run. It's going to be a great business that you could scale to whatever measure you want. Right. Or two, you have a business that somebody else would want to buy from you. Neither of which is a bad problem to have.
Right. It's huge. I mean, it pains me to think there's one of my patients, he runs, I think it's like an air conditioning repair business, and he has commercial accounts, which is huge because that's like steady business that you're just going to be doing. They want to move out of state, and he's like, but this business is keeping him here. I'm like, what? Have you thought about selling it? And he's like, never even, he's service provider, in the trenches and whatnot. And I'm like, you got commercial accounts, you have a good network. Let's say your business is grossing $100,000 a year, and you could 2x or 3x or 5x your company. I mean, how long is it going to take you that you're basically getting an advance on 4 or 5 years of your income all at once, which means you can reinvest that and build something else wherever you are, or go consult other people on how to do it. And it's like the light bulb turns on and it's like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to keep trading my hours for dollars. Like there is ways to leverage the information that I know and the assets that I'm building and then help other people build assets. Do you know who Roland Frazier is?
No.
He wrote a book. It's like one of those free like business card books. Like you can download it for free. It's called 0%. I have it right up here. But it's basically called 0% down, where he basically goes and acquires companies for 0% down, and all he's taking is equity stake to raise up, the company. So he comes in, will advise, consult, build up the company, and then his equity stake obviously, grows more. And so now you think about it, now you can own, air conditioning cooling companies around the country without actually having to, make those on-call midnight calls at the hospital or, whatever it is, for what rather than what you can actually do with your hands. And I think that is information that if we can get that out, like you mentioned to every entrepreneur, like from the beginning, your business is not your pet. Like it's not something that you grow and you grow with over the years, and 15 years later when you're ready to die, you think about getting rid of. Like that is the least valuable time your company is when you're ready to completely step out, versus you sell it in the middle. Sure, it still has growth potential, but now you're hands off and now you have your time and freedom.
Exactly. And sometimes we think we are like the top dog in our company, right? It's like our company is here and we are right here. Like we are the company.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have an investor, even if you're a solo founder, if we can start looking at here's our company, that's the top of the hierarchy. And then we are right here as the owner of the company. But we still report to this company.
Yeah.
Because if we are the company at the top, then how are you a sellable asset versus you're here? If you create the system, somebody could just buy this.
Yep.
Which someone could plug into your role. But if you are the company, then they are just buying you.
Yep.
And you might be a sellable asset, but they're really buying you to then work for this company and take all your knowledge. That's not what you want. You want to have the option where, yes, if you pay me an insane amount of money, sure, I'll stick on, but you can buy this company without me. I'll teach you how to do the systems. I'm out of here and I'm going to build something else, or I'm going to hang out and relax, spend time with my family, whatever it is.
Right. Buy a couple duplexes or, whatever, and get that passive income and keep on growing. Last point, I think that would be really helpful. Are you married? Do you have kids? We didn't talk about that before.
No, right now I'm traveling the world, so I think it'd be tough to do that with
ain't no time for that. I have 3 kids, and so it's a little bit more real for me when I start to think about like building a business as a legacy. Something that isn't just gonna like rise and fall with me. I think our generation, I'm the same age as you, has not benefited from corporate America, where our parents started as a delivery person, worked their way up the corporate ladder for 40 years, 50 years, are now, retiring or, retired, having built nothing for us. And now we're starting at ground zero with most of us, at least 5 digits in student loan debt, working for jobs that we don't typically like, which is why we have the great resignation and people, kind of creating their own thing. What's the importance for you of starting something now that is going to be lasting to the next generation? And how do you start developing that vision? Because a lot of people just get stuck on, who do I sell my product to first? And here you and I are thinking like, who's going to be buying my product 100 years from now when my grandkids are running the property, the company or something like that? How do you start to open up your mind to those sort of possibilities?
Yeah, it's a great point. And one of the things too, as an entrepreneur, is we don't want to be short-sighted. We always want to think long-term, because starting a business is not a short-term win. Like you might get lucky and get some type of short-term win, but it's incredibly rare, especially in your early days of being an entrepreneur. So number one, you always need to be looking long-term while having the strategies to execute on a short-term basis, of course, to build up to that long-term vision. So for me, really simply, again, I'm a single guy, but legacy matters a lot to me. And eventually I do want to have kids and a family. But even if I didn't, building my own legacy would be important, because one of the pieces of advice I always got from my dad was, he said his job as a parent was to give myself and my siblings a better life than he had. And I feel like that's the same with my future kids, assuming I do have kids in the future. And I believe that even for future generations, is I want to set them up so that Gen Alpha, which is after Gen Z, has it better than we had as millennials and as Gen Zers had. So I think that you have to build on the future. And that's why I'm so adamant about number one, building for myself, because without building for myself, I can't teach in the best ways. When I teach, I share all of the shit, the firings of, co-founders, the struggles with retention, selling a business for not what we wanted to sell it for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I wasn't building that business from the start, if I was just reading business books, I couldn't share it in a way that would be able to resonate as much. So my focus is always, how do I build myself and my business as strong as possible so that I can give back to the world as much as possible?
Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned, instead of just reading books, but actually doing it. Like, who are the people in our universities teaching? They're the ones that just read all the books and are regurgitating what the books say. The books are usually years behind what's actually happening, especially in accredited universities and whatnot. So I think it'd be highly valuable to get coaching and mentoring, from you. I know that's something that you invest in. That's something that I invest in. I'm investing in this a podcast is super easy to start. Like, you don't have to have anything. Like, my earphones just died. I'm literally just talking on my microphone with the computer, like, to somebody. You could be across the country, across the world, and I'm gleaning so much. And especially if you don't have much of an entrepreneur, a podcast on how to be an entrepreneur, there's plenty of people like us that have been more than willing to invest 20-30 minutes of our time, because we know it's not just a one-on-one conversation. This is going to be a broadcast around the world for all of time. As long as Apple and Spotify exist, people will be able to listen to this episode. And we never know where these connections are gonna lead into. They say your network is your net worth, right? You want to be able to pull strings when you need to, but more give back. And I'll give you an example of that. I wrote a book that came out in February, and I had done, maybe 20 or 30 podcast episodes at the time, so that, I provided value to them, plugged your company, never asked for anything. But when my book came out, it's like, hey, would you mind sharing this with your crowd? And we had a great book launch because people appreciated the value that I provided them. And they're more than happy to buy a book and share it with their people, especially a book that provided high quality content. And so starting the entrepreneur journey, you have to start with the abundance mindset where you're not there to take from the world. You're there to bring value. That's what makes entrepreneurs successful and unsuccessful, is the ones that take are usually the ones that don't last very long. The one that give and are there for impact and for legacy, like Adam and myself, are the ones that are going to be the long lasting, are going to continue to grow, because ultimately we're not here for ourselves. Sure, we want to be compensated for, the value that we're providing, but ultimately we would probably do it anyway. If we had the potential to do it for free, we would, for sure. Like, just like this podcast,
Exactly.
Any last words that you'd like to add as far as advice goes? And we'll kind of get you into, if people want to book you to speak, or are interested in coaching with you, or want to know more about your company, where do they find you?
Yeah, even just on that point you just made, I think it's spot on. And one of my mentors gave me this advice. He always said, Adam, it takes a lifetime to build your reputation, but just a moment, just one moment to lose it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important always to be thinking about, how do I add value? How do I do the right thing? And we're not human. We're not robots. We are human. We're going to make mistakes, but if you own up to that mistake, and that's why we weren't as successful in my tech startup as we dreamed we would be, and we had investors that didn't make what they expected to make. But the reason why we still have great relationships with them is because we were always honest. Mm-hmm. We didn't shy away. We didn't fudge the numbers. We didn't try to BS them. We were always honest with them. And even when we could have taken more money at the end, we said no to taking more money because we knew it wasn't right for them and for the business. And we knew we had to look to sell the company. So if you do right by people, it will always come back. If you add value to people, it will always come back. But sometimes people think too much about short-term wins. And I get it. Like, I've been in positions where I wasn't paying myself. I was paying my employees. I was literally eating, cereal and peanut butter for dinner. Like, I didn't have it. I was in massive debt, like really struggling as an entrepreneur. But if in those times, in the toughest times, if you can stay true to your core values, then when times are good, you're going to continue to stick to those core values. So yeah, I love that quote. I love what you shared. So that just want to echo that.
Yeah, so good. Love it. Well, thanks so much for joining me. If people want to find out more about you, coach with you, find out more about your company, where can they go?
Yeah. So my website for my lead generation email business is eocworks.com. The name of it is Email Outreach Company. My email is adam@eocworks.com. My most active social media site is Instagram, and you can just find me at Adam I Rosen, ROSEN.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining me once again. I look forward to people listening to this episode. It's definitely going to be one of those highly downloaded for sure. I can see that now. Good luck in your travels. I'm glad that COVID stuff is pretty much over with and you have a little bit more freedom. I'm excited to follow you and keep up to date with all the stuff that you're doing.
No, for sure. Thanks again, Chris. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm really looking forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Perspective Podcast. To connect with Dr. Bowman, follow him on Instagram at Dr. Chris Bowman. Until next time, make shift happen.